have several groups I work with sometimes. Like we have a postgrad course in psychology of consciousness at one of the major institutes for psychology in Portugal. And I do participate in that course. There is another in clinical hypnosis at the Faculty of Medicine at Lisbon, and I also participate there. And there is still another on regression therapy. It's a more private course, and I also contribute a little bit. I was always very interested in the spiritual traditions, yoga, meditation, and the like. On the other side, let's say officially my connection to the transpersonal movement began in 1994, when I started to make more formal training as a transpersonal psychotherapist. That was regression therapy, mainly with an expert from Brazil, and then real transpersonal psychotherapy with another expert from Brazil, and several other things. So I'm a president of the European Transpersonal Association, which has been growing a lot, and now we have close to 25 member countries. And this association began in the 80s as a sort of small meeting point for friends from a lot less big number of people from European associations in transpersonal psychology. And then it started to grow, and recently it has grown a lot more. So it began something a little bit bigger and more ambitious in a way. We also started to have a group for the certification of, at an European level, transpersonal psychotherapists, and we are working on that and towards the accreditation of institutes too. The idea is to, in a way, to ascertain the quality of transpersonal psychotherapy in Europe. So we have established relatively high standards, very close in turn to the European Association for Psychotherapy, which is a very huge and powerful association. And we already certified close to 50 therapists, and we are moving on with this process. So we consider their curricula, we consider the way they are going through their activity as psychotherapists, some ethical standards, and eventually we are certifying people. The majority of them are not yet acknowledging the so-called transpersonal movement, or even what we call sometimes the psychology of consciousness. But it is slowly changing. I would say that a lot of universities, they are not in the front line of progress. They stay behind. Sometimes things start moving at the social level, and then some universities are almost obliged to accompany that and to learn from that. It's obvious that we have a relative vacuum of values in today's Western world mainly, and not just, but also Eastern, I believe. And with this, also lots of people are trying to find new values, new ways for life, and they go for spirituality. Not just religion, but spirituality in general. And at the same time, what is called the transpersonal movement is mainly about human consciousness. And for me, it's even surprising the way universities are still almost ignoring the importance of the study of consciousness. Because actually, for psychologists or psychiatrists, it should be the main variable to be studied, because there is no way we can think about humans without consciousness of ourselves. Without that, we will be robots. And I used to say that without consciousness, there would be no culture, no arts, no philosophy, no religion whatsoever. Because if we are not aware of ourselves, then nothing happens in those fields. For instance, there is no culture because there are no witnesses for culture. Nobody is there aware of themselves or of itself or aware of the others. So, for instance, an artist will produce something a little bit to himself and to others that will be listening or watching or touching or whatever he will be doing. So it's very hard to say that that we can move on studying psychology without that. And actually at the universities we have been studying mainly the less important variables for defining humans. Even thought or emotion are things that make sense in relationship with consciousness, because without it, it's hard to say that they are important at all. But at the same time, consciousness should be more important. We are used to separate objects of study and to isolate them so we can study them better. But there is an epistemological question to that, because are we studying them better? Probably we are not, because we are losing the connections. It's like, so that we can study better human behavior, we keep forgetting about the main thing behind it for me, which is consciousness and identity. My own definition of identity is behind what I do all the time. I think if we follow the right direction, we will gain a lot more impact in the European world, and probably globally speaking too, because I think the only way humankind can move forth now implies humanizing people in general and gaining a different notion of our equilibrium with the planet, a different notion of the way we can live together in society. For instance, this competition is in a way a more recent version of war. Like we still have war between big companies, we have war between the banks, we have war between the biggest companies and the smaller ones. And this spirit of war must come to an end. We must learn cooperation more than competition. We must learn openness to others instead of mistrust and the closing of frontiers or the aggression, because we just became too powerful. Now we know too well how to produce, let's say, a biological war, a nuclear war, an electronic war, and whatever kind of powerful ways for mutual destruction. At the same time, we have been at war with nature in a way. We have been destroying nature, and the recent climate changes that are ongoing are a byproduct of that. And if we don't change our mentality, probably we are threatened by even the extinction of humankind. So for me, there is only one way: we must change or we die, even as a species, probably. You know, what I am talking about, I cannot scientifically demonstrate in totality, or even form a big part of it. I have a lot of clinical experience that makes me personally convinced that I am talking about something real. At the same time, I do like to make my own inquiries about what science is doing and what we know from scientific research. And also there are some points, some things that we already know. But there's a lot of skepticism around it, because some discoveries in some research projects are getting findings that go totally against the prevailing scientific paradigm and the prevailing worldview. So again, if we go to universities with that, we are telling people that they spent their entire lives and careers betting on the wrong horse. That's hard, and so they don't accept it. Also, they don't accept sometimes to really challenge their ideas and the way they live. What I'm trying to do is to really to do my job, to do the best I can while I'm still around. And I like an old say from a very interesting woman from the 19th century, Elena Blavatsky. She was saying that there is no higher religion than truth. And so I assert what I believe and what I think is good and important for humans. And that also makes me go to bed each night feeling okay with myself.